Welcome back. You're watching We Mean Business. The government has said that it will scrap charging the airport development fees meant to cover the funding gap for the development of Mumbai and New Delhi airports from January next year. Air travellers are hoping this will lead to a reduction in cost of air travel, but the decision has raised larger issues on the policy flip-flop in the aviation sector continuing, as well as issues with regard to funding of airports and how that will really go on here on. Let me introduce our guests on the show. With me here, Dubey, partner and head of aviation of KPMG, Mr. Rajan Mehra, leading aviation expert and MD of Universal Aviation, Kapil, CEO of South Asia of CAPA, and Mr. Ajay Prasad, the former Civil Aviation Secretary, joins us on a link. Many thanks all of you for being with us. Let me first off get a response from all our guests on the government's decision to scrap the airport development fee. Kapil, to you first.
First of all, completely surprised. I thought that this
was completely out of the blue.
No one
was expecting it.
No, I was not expecting. Knowing little about aviation, I thought that this was not on the agenda at all. So that's number one. It does two things. It will not reduce the charges. It might increase the charges.
So I would have to pay 200 rupees less when I travel.
You might have to eventually pay. The question is that you take from one basket and put in the other basket. So you might have to eventually pay more. The second thing that it does is that it creates a structural challenge for both the airports to raise existing equities, has to raise debt. They'll have to go to their lenders and partners. For example, in the case of DIAL, the current airport partners are 8 months away from a possible exit. So it just creates a challenge for the airport. It doesn't end up giving any relief to the consumer. So perhaps not a well-thought decision.
Amber, would you agree with that thought? And what, according to you, could have led the government to take a decision like that? Again, we're having decisions happening in isolation, no clear-cut policy, a flip-flop in aviation.
Well, first of all, I would say that the motives behind this were positive in the sense that they want to make air travel more affordable. Right now, it's limited to just a very tiny minority in the country. But at the same time, against various other decisions that the ministry has taken in the last 7-8 months, this one, I think, looks like something which needs to be reworked, as Kapil already pointed out some of the key points. First of all, it doesn't make any major difference, because even if you theoretically remove $200, if you look
but
at
that's only for domestic. International,
if you look at
it's
the
a much
typical
higher
Delhi,
number for
Bombay,
Delhi, right.
yeah, whatever it is. So if in a Delhi, Bombay fare of about 8,000 to 10,000 rupees, frankly, 200 rupees is just peanuts. That's number one. And number two, the basic difference between ADF and UDF is that one is a capital levy and the other is a revenue receipt. The capital receipt is not subject to revenue share or taxes. The UDF is. So if you change the color of the money, the whole game changes. If you collect the same money as UDF, you also have to give not only the entire investments brought in by the developer, you also have to give him returns. You also pay him back all the taxes that he pays. So in turn, I might save $200. I might end up giving much more in longer run.
Mr. Mehra, your thoughts?
Shweta, this is a classic example of the knee-jerk reactions we see from the government, especially when it comes to aviation. So you have to look at things in perspective. Fares are high not because of ADF charges. Fares are high because the operational cost of running an airline in India is so high. It's amongst the highest in the world. So if they think that by this reduction, which is a minuscule reduction in the overall scheme of the operating costs that an airline faces.
And it will have a huge impact on the funding of the airport.
And it will have a huge impact on funding. It will have huge negative impacts other places too. Yeah.
Okay, so Mr. Ajay Prasad, let me try and understand what the government's thinking could be at this point in time. The government obviously is trying to revive the aviation sector in whatever little way it can. But all our panelists here seem to believe that this is a knee-jerk reaction, not a well-thought-out decision, and it won't really achieve the objective of reducing the cost of air travel. Then why the need to go ahead with it?
This decision to me also was a bit surprising, because it was really not on the agenda and not being discussed for any length of time. However, I mean, the way I look at it is that it is a measure to try and reduce the costs which the passenger pays, especially in the light of the fact there have been, increased fares, the cost of travel has gone up. So whatever relief can be provided is welcome. However, I agree with what Kapil said a little while back, that relief will be short-lived, because it raises a lot of structural questions on how the financing of the airports has to be done. And I think this is where both the operators GMR, GVK, as well as more importantly the Airport Economic Regulatory Authority will have to balance a lot of requirements to see that ultimately the cost does not go up for the passengers. I think a very fine balancing act will have to be done there.
Mr. Prasad, also the larger view on the policy flip-flop in the aviation sector, because this is a classic example of one.
You see, as I said that there have been some very significant decisions taken in the last few months, and they are all welcome. This is also if you look at it in the way that you are trying to reduce the cost of travel, which were at a reasonable level of some years back and have gone up recently, it has to be, I think, looked at in that context.
India's #1 news app just got even better. Download NDTV's new app. Fully optimized for retina display. Full screen view. Faster response time. And Sudoku. NDTV's new iPad app. Download now.